Yeah, hey, James, okay, perfect. Do you see Tim?
Huh?
Tim? No, I didn't see him. Yeah, it's the red charger and I need the block somewhere. Okay. Yes, sir, how can I help you?
I had some drawings here that Chris Jones sent me, and they came in 2 weeks, and they from the hair secretary.
Are you here for a hearing
Yeah.
though? So whenever you come up for your hearing, you'll request that these be distributed.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Yep. Yes, ma'am. Thank you. Sunshades and all. She's so darn cute.
Jennifer, you ready?
Yes, sir.
Escambia County Contractor Competency Board is in session for April the 5th, 2023. Madam Secretary, would you read the rules?
Yes, we're having a little bit of storage space difficulties with
I
this
know.
computer, so I'm just going to read them. Please silence all cell phones. If you wish to speak, please let the board secretary know in advance. Otherwise, raise your hand for the board chair to recognize your request. When the chairman calls you to speak, come to the podium, adjust the microphone, and then state your name and address for the record. You are requested to keep your remarks brief and factual. Both parties of an issue will be granted uniform maximum time to speak. This usually runs between 3 to 5 minutes. This hearing is considered quasi-judicial. Conduct is formal, and profane or derogatory comments will not be tolerated.
Thank you. Madam Secretary, we have a quorum.
Yes, sir. With 8 members present, we do.
Thank you. Do you have proof of publication and notification of this meeting?
Yes, sir, Mr. Chair. It was published on March 30th, 2023 in the Escambia County Sun Press.
Thank you. Item 4, approval of minutes. I entertain a motion to approve the minutes, March 8th. We have a motion made. Is there a second? Second. Motion made and seconded. Any comments? Being none, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, like sign. Being none, the minutes from March 8th are approved. At this point in the agenda, we have a public forum. It's the opportunity for the public to come before the board on any subject that's not on the agenda. Do we have anybody that wants to speak?
We did have 2 wonderful ladies sign up to speak at public forum. It's Pat Kramer and Kim Sump. If you could please come to the podium, state your name and address for the record, and then you can address the board.
Kim Sump, 8400 Edith Avenue.
Pat Kramer, 8400 Edith Avenue, Milton.
Please.
We hired a contractor back in 2021. They have done really bad work. I have pictures and their acknowledgement from Better Business Bureau that they are held liable, but they will not return our phone calls or come fix the issue, and it's major issues.
The kitchen floor is about falling apart.
And underneath the trailer, no insulation. The insulation is hanging after they were paid over $18,000 to fix all this.
Have you filed a complaint with the county?
No, sir, I didn't know I had to.
You need to file a complaint with the county. As soon as you file a complaint, it'll come before the board
Okay,
for consideration.
okay. Even though
Thank
it's Santa Rosa County?
It's in Santa Rosa.
So you're in Santa Rosa County
Yes, ma'am.
jurisdiction. Call the Santa Rosa County Permitting Office and ask for Robin. Is it Robin or? Yeah. Tracy Kirchinger, not Miss Robin. I'm sorry. I believe she retired. Tracy Kirchinger. She's going to be the one that will speak to you about your complaint.
Okay. So we file a complaint over in Santa Rosa County?
Yes, yes. They have their own licensing board and their own investigations division.
Okay,
We only deal with Escambia County.
okay, well, thank you so much.
Thank you. Nice to have you here.
Yeah, we didn't know what was going on.
Okay,
so-
good luck.
Thank you.
Now we move to board secretary status report.
Yes, sir, Mr. Chair. So our first item under Board Secretary Status Report is David L. Clements. He put in an application at our last board meeting for, application for examination. However, he had already taken the state certified examinations. We were gonna research because he made 70 on that state certified examination and our requirement is 75. We researched it thoroughly. You have to make a 75 for you to receive a license in Escambia County through our local board. So I just wanted to update the board and let you know that his examination through the state did not qualify him to get licensed here.
So he probably will come back before us.
I think his avenue is to continue on through the state, even though they're progressing at a slower pace.
Yeah.
I know they're awfully busy, but I think he's going to continue through the state because he did pass the examination with them.
Okay, very good. Item 2,
Yes, sir, Mr. Chair. This item has to do with Carl and Carol Moody, the homeowner at 5700 Grand Lagoon Boulevard. They filed a complaint against Hallie Lovato, doing business as High Point DBR LLC, license number RB 29003307. We went through the investigation of this complaint, and we need further discussion with this board about this complaint. The license that actually pulled the permitting was not Mr. Lovato, it was Tyler Weldon. He qualified High Point DBR LLC at the time that this contract was in place. He pulled in 2012. He pulled the permitting. Ultimately, Mr. Lovato started qualifying the company. Mr. Weldon no longer qualified the company, and Mr. Weldon's license it's not even active any longer. Staff it needs some direction from this board. Mr. Moody is present today. It's at the discretion of the board if they would like to hear from him.
well, since he's here, bring him forward.
Mr. Moody, if you could please come to the podium, state your name and address for the record.
My name is Carl Moody. My address in Florida is 5700 Grand Lagoon Boulevard.
All right.
Very complicated situation, unfortunately. And throughout the whole process, my wife and I dealt with Hal Lovato. And when we first engaged them to do the design of the home, it was under a company called TOP Top Construction. But the same license number that Jennifer referenced was used under his name and in the logo for Top. About 6-7 months later, the design was finished. We started dealing with Mr. Lovato under a company called High Point DBR. Same license number under his name and then in the High Point logo. And so we frankly had not heard of Tyler Weldon until you guys sent us a copy of the building permit. And since Lovato was not qualified at that time, Mr. Weldon obviously qualified him. And I have been reviewing the statutes, Florida Statutes 489, and there are obligations for somebody who qualifies a company, whether they're primary or secondary. And that obligation is to supervise construction. And so halfway through construction, Mr. Lovato secured his Escambia County license, but nothing was changed on any permits. And the CO was actually issued also in Tyler Weldon's name. So I know we're not here to talk about the builder. We're just trying to get on your schedule for a probable cause hearing. And then I guess what I would say to you guys, you know, I know your charge is to protect the public. We have a signed complaint. It's got everything you guys need. Mr. Tolbert has been out and inspected the property, and I think he will certainly testify that there are significant issues out there. And then my point to you would be, whatever license he's operating under, Mr. Lovato is still pulling permits in Escambia County. And I know that's part of your charge and purview to validate whether somebody should be allowed to pull a permit. And I think also with the understanding that Mr. Weldon qualified the company, why had we never heard his name when we were going through this whole process? We had no idea it wasn't Lovato's license. And did Mr. Weldon even go out to the property as what is his charge under the Florida statutes? So I think on top of the construction issues, probably a few questions about how did this qualifying actually work and why weren't the statutes followed in the qualifying?
I think you want to,
Chair,
yes.
I just received a text message from the building official, Tim Tolbert. He would like this held until he arrives. He would like to provide some insight into this
Okay.
as well.
I mean, I can give you the story, but I know we're not here to really talk about the
We're
building.
not here to.
Talking about
we're
whether
not
you
here
guys.
to investigate the
Exactly.
issue. Because it's
Exactly.
not before us yet as a complaint.
Yeah.
As a formal complaint.
Right.
Okay,
so-
let's postpone it.
Until he arrives.
With the agreement of the board, we'll postpone it till Talbot gets here. Thank you,
Thank
sir.
you.
Contractor applications?
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman. We have Kelly Hardman. This is the application that I'll present to the board, and then Jessica will take over from there. If you remember, Mr. Hardman came before this board for reciprocity from another jurisdiction. His application was on our last agenda, and the board at that time asked if the board had the ability to approve his application with restrictions. From the research that we've done, the board does not have the ability to put restrictions on an approval. It's basically just a yes or no. You're okay to reciprocate or you're not okay to reciprocate. So his application is before the board for review.
What's the staff's recommendation?
So reciprocity, staff does not give a recommendation on. The only reason a reciprocity would come before this board at all, I'm your designee to sign off on it if it meets all criteria for reciprocity, unless they mark a question with yes on their application. And that is what brought this question up. Did you have the ability to approve with restriction? So if you'd like me to bring his application back up for review?
Please,
Okay.
please.
And Mr. Hardman, are you present? If you'd like to come to the podium and state your name and address for the record, that way in case the board has any questions for you.
My name's Kelly Hardman. I live at 1637 Garcon Point Road, Milton, Florida. I'd like to say that I lost money on this job. I put some of my personal money into this job, and I worked for almost 3 months for free, basically getting this job finished. And the lien was satisfied within 3 weeks, and I was able to get the CO finished and everything signed off before the owners lost their locked-in mortgage rate. So I put my personal money into this job. I worked for free for about 3 months. So am I financially responsible? Yes, I am. I'm only here today because I have a previous customer that I've done work for in Milton, and she has a house in Pensacola now. She'd like for me to replace the windows and doors in. I've got plenty of work in Santa Rosa County. I'm here for her.
Any questions from the board? Recommendation?
Mr. Chair, I move that we recommend for reciprocity.
Be approved.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. Is there any further discussion? Being none, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, like sign. Being none, the motion to approve reciprocity for Mr. Hartman is approved. Thank you,
Thank you,
sir.
Mr. Lester. Thank you.
Item 2.
Mr. Chairman, we have applicant Clifford Routley. Mr. Routley, please come forward to the podium and state your name and address for the record.
My name's Cliff Routley. My address is 5323 English Oak Drive, Pace, Florida, 32571.
After reviewing his application, we recommend that he be approved for the general contractor testing.
Move approval.
Is the motion, is there a second? Second. Motion made and seconded. Any further discussion?
Yes, sir.
Go ahead.
I know the bankruptcy thing was explained somewhat in there, and I think one of the concerns that we keep having pop up is the financial understanding of builders in our area, particularly
Yes, sir.
with everything that's happened.
Yes, sir.
And this was a trucking company.
Yes, sir. It was in 2004. And all of the financials was in my personal name. So when the trucking business went out of business, that was the reason for the bankruptcy in 2004.
And
It
since-
wasn't anything personally beyond the trucking business.
And all your construction, though, there's not been any kind
No,
of.
sir. In my construction, I'm doing fine. My financials are pretty good.
Good.
I'm actually a registered or a contractor, residential contractor with the state now.
I saw your scores were high, and I
Yes,
just
sir.
want to commend just for, with all that we've been through, that's a concern, obviously, to
Yes, sir.
watch.
Thank you.
Any further discussion? Being none, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, like sign. Being none, the application for examination general contractor for Mr. Routley is approved. Thank you,
Thank
sir.
you guys so much.
Sure.
Have a blessed day.
Item number 7.3.
Mr. Chairman, we have Jonathan Flynn. Jonathan Flynn, can you please step forward to the podium and state your name for the record? Name and your address for the record.
My name is Jonathan Flynn, 4647 Winterdale Drive, Pace, Florida, 32571.
After reviewing his application, we recommend that he be approved for the master plumber and gas testing.
Motion to approve.
Is there a second? Second. Motion made and seconded. Any discussion? Being none, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, like sign. Being none, the application for examination for master plumber with gas for Jonathan Flynn is approved. Thank you,
Thank you.
sir.
Thank y'all.
Don't come back to see us. Now we move to item 8.
Yes, sir, Mr. Chair. Item 8.1 is Samuel Soto, doing business as Sammy's Construction, Inc., state certified license number CCC 133-2598, Contractor Competency Board Complaint Number 230111 COM. It's in regard to Charles Garnett Senior, homeowner complainant at 3743 West Gadsden Street, Pensacola, Florida 32505. This is a continued probable cause hearing. Mr. Garnett, are you present today?
Yes.
And are you going to provide testimony for this hearing? Mr. Soto, are you present today? Be noted that Mr. Soto is not present. At this time, I'm going to have Mr. Garnett and Melissa Reber, our investigator, sworn in, and Ms. Reber will remain sworn in for the duration of this hearing.
Can you raise your right hand, sir? Do you solemnly swear the testimony you're about to give today will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes.
Ms. Reber, was a formal complaint filed with this board, and on what date was it filed?
Yes, there was on January 9th, 2023.
Were you able to communicate with the complainant about this case?
Yes, I was.
And were you able to communicate with the respondent about this case?
Yes, I was.
Did the complainant provide any supporting documentation for the case, and is it attached to the agenda?
He did, and it is attached.
And did the respondent provide any supporting documentation for the case, and is it attached to the agenda?
Yes, he did, and it is attached.
Staff would request that the documentation attached to the agenda as backup be moved into evidence.
Does that include Mr. New Stuff?
At this time, no, it would not.
Okay.
He wants to present some additional.
Entertain a motion to
So
approve.
move.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. Any further discussion? Being none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign. Being none, all the documentation will be moved into evidence in this case.
Ms. Reber, were you able to assign any alleged violations to the case? If so, please state each violation and your justification.
Possibly Code Section 1837D13C.3. Basically, Mr. Garnett had some information that he felt like may have been some misleading statements in the affidavit.
Yeah.
And this board directed that we go out and do a courtesy inspection to ensure that there was no misrepresentation. So that inspection did occur. Bobby Whitmore's here to talk about what he found when he did that inspection.
Okay.
Board, at this time, I'm going to have our inspector, Bobby Whitmire, sworn in.
Do you solemnly swear the testimony you're about to give today will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes.
Mr. Whitmire, did you perform a courtesy inspection at the location?
Yes, ma'am.
If you can go ahead and explain and give details of what occurred.
Well, I've looked over the complaints that he had as far as the roof, and everything that I found was really just it was just cosmetic things. I did lift a couple of shingles and find a few rusted nail heads that were sitting proud on about 2 out of 6 shingles that I did look at. Everything else that he explained was really just cosmetic things. Everything else that he had complaints about was really just, I'm sorry.
So, Mr. Whitmire, how long have you been in the roofing industry before you became an inspector?
I did it pretty much my whole life since I was 15 years old, working with my dad.
So you have a good knowledge base of the requirements, the code requirements for a roof.
Yes, ma'am.
And would you say this roof, if you were to go out there and inspect it for a final inspection, that it would pass inspection?
Yes, ma'am.
Any questions by the board? No questions? Would you like to hear from Mr. Garnett?
Since he made the trip, may as well.
Mr. Garnett, if you could please come to the podium, state your name and address for the record. Mr. Garnett also provided an additional document that he would like dispersed.
Now, while she's doing that, my name is Chuck Garnett. I live at 3743 West Gadsden Street, Pensacola.
Chair, I believe the document is a printout from the property appraiser with the square footage of the structure.
Yeah.
So in the interim, while this is being passed out, we do not have any code violations that we've noted.
The inspector did not determine that there were any code violations.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Garnett, you have anything else?
Yes, I do. When Mr. Whitmore was there, he had commented, one of my complaints, and you have pictures of it, the contractor, in installing the roof, ripped off about, I don't know, Mr. Whitmore can comment on that, 10 or 12 asbestos shingles, and then shoved aluminum flashing up underneath them, took the broken shingles and then glued them on top of it, with the understanding, at least this is the defense of the contractor, that the wood underneath was rotten and that was just a temporary flashing until I could get a carpenter up there. Mr. Whitmire, with his own hands, pounded on it and commented it seemed solid to him and that it was, he called it a sloppy job, but nevertheless it has to be repaired. And I'm guessing $700 for that comment, for that complaint. The reason you're looking at the diagram of my property of the house is an issue that Mr. Talbot brought up. In the billing of the invoice, which you also have, I was billed for 58 sheets of plywood. And there's an indication that when you add all that up, the maximum they could have used on the house was 1,400 square feet. I was billed for 1,850. And Mr. Talbot kind of made the issue worse by saying that it was not a complete tear-off. There was still plywood there, which the additional plywood would not have amounted to 1,800, and, well, it was 58 sheets of plywood. So, that's an issue. I think I was overbilled. Also, in the invoice, and this is kind of screwy, previous to their arrival, in anticipation of doing some of the work before the hurricanes came in, I purchased 9 2x10s, 10 feet long, and painted both sides of them, and helped install those. I was on the ladder lifting them up while they were on the top nailing them. Rather difficult because they didn't speak English. I paid for those. I also brought from Indiana 37 pieces of 2x4s which were treated. 37 2x4s treated. I was going to use for another project. I said, there they are, boys. If you need them, use them. They used them, and then they billed me for them. Right here on the invoice. Total of 56 pieces. That includes the 9 2x10s. And they billed me $230 for it. I also contracted with them in writing that they were to leave a square, 3 bundles of shingles at my property that I could use in the future to repair this and that, maybe build a doghouse so that the shingles would match. There were no bundles left. There was not a single shingle left on the property, and they said they got lucky. It just worked out. There weren't anything left over. When they hauled the trash away, the tear-off stuff, there were pieces of plywood stacked neatly up against the side of the gate and not considered trash. So, where did all this stuff go? Well, thanks to an open records request to Chris Boyce, with your department, he sent me a building permit issued the day they started on my property. The day they started, they received a building permit on Livonia Avenue, that's 7267 Lenora Avenue, recently purchased house, and of all the manufacturers of shingles in the world, of all the styles of shingles, of all the colors available, they picked, or the contractor picked, because he changed my color too, he picked Tamco shingles, Heritage shingles, that's an architectural shingle, and Heritage is one of the many, and they picked the same color. I drove over, looked at it, and the pitch of the roof is so low that I really can't get a good shot at the shingle itself, but it's the same thing. Did my leftovers go to that house? Why aren't they here to defend themselves? And in defense, and this guy right here is a real roofer, I'll tell you. He gets up every few years, takes the screws out of his metal roof and puts new ones in so they don't leak. He knows what he's talking about, and when he lifted shingles up, yes, he couldn't find the same ones I had that only had 2 nails per shingle, and that was just random. My daughter peeled them up, and I took pictures of them, so he didn't hit any of those, but I believe you'll agree with me, most of the nails were in crooked and stood proud. And the ones that I saw when they put up the ridge cap, I had them put the ridge cap up all the way across rather than cut short on the ends. I think it just looks better. And when they put that up, I noticed they stepped on them and the proud nails were coming up through the top of the shingle. And I think he'll agree, it probably won't leak in my lifetime, but that's not what I paid for.
You have anything else, Mr. Kernick?
Pardon
Do
me?
you have anything else?
That's it.
Do you have any questions?
Have you talked to the construction company or the roofing company?
They
Well,
have, incidentally, I want to back up just a little bit. In their defense, in the last meeting, under oath, I stated that they had formed a corporation in Oak Park, Illinois, a very ritzy part of Chicago. Frank Lloyd Wright has 5 houses there. One of them was built for Nat King Cole. I know the area very well. That's where their original company was, J&A Construction. At the time of the last hearing, under Freedom of Information, Illinois style, they had to wait 30 days. I didn't have the information by then. They're clear. I didn't want to make an accusation up front and then infer that something was wrong. They have no complaints in Illinois except for the fact that for some reason, the state of Illinois dissolved their corporation. I had to pay $35 to get that information. That's the reason why I didn't want to pay the $35. It's a moot issue because they brought the corporation in 2012 to Florida, and the state of Florida dissolved the corporation. So I'm done.
will they not come back out and look over?
One of the issues I had was they shingled over the flashing by the roof, and it kind of popped up. And Bobby looked at it real close, and during the warm spell we had, it did seal Mac down. So I'm not happy, but satisfied.
Will they not come back out?
No.
That's what I'm asking.
No.
They won't come back out?
I don't know if they're in town. You hear all kinds of, they put a lien on my house using one address. They filed a complaint using another address, and the billing address, I'm still holding $4,000 of their money. They put a lien on my house. I think I had that removed. I filed a counter complaint, and I haven't heard anything. They haven't tried to collect any more money. They're not here today. They weren't here a month ago, so. And my main concern is, my heart and soul is in Brownsville. I want to see this thing prosper and the whole community. And If they're going into Brownsville and screwing the veterans and the old women with no, you know, just like you saw before, they're in trouble from me, and I'm hoping they're in trouble from you. You don't care about me, but I think you have a fiduciary responsibility to maintain the housing quality in Brownsville if it's gonna survive. That's
So-
where I'm coming from.
So do you still have $4,000 that you
Yes, I
owe
do.
them? Okay.
Well, my thoughts, that you still owe them money. A lot of this is cosmetic.
But I didn't pay for, if I want, they weren't the low bidder.
Well, we may not be able to.
I understand
We may
that.
not be able to do anything because if there's not a code violation, and you get a roofer, all roofers are not the same.
I
So,
understand
you know what
that.
I mean?
And Bobby said he would not be proud of this house.
Yeah.
I mean, you know.
On there.
Mr.
So you
Batchelor.
may have to go a civil way to make it work out.
I'm too old for that.
On there.
Mr. Batchelor, I apologize for interrupting, but I believe there was some additional questions that the county wanted to ask of our inspector. So you may want to find out what he has to say to finish up, if you're done. I don't know if you want to hear what the inspector has to say based on the comments that were made today.
Oh, you're saying I put wood in his mouth? Is that-
No, sir, I'm saying that we just want to follow up on the things that he said because he's here to tell us what he said.
Yeah, well.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sorry.
So, Mr. Whitmire, it was commented that you referenced that this was a sloppy job, and that's of a cosmetic nature commentary. Do you feel that this was a sloppy job?
There were some things that, you know, they could have been done better, but as far as code violations, everything was there, everything, you know, would have passed my inspection. Some of the trim work and metal work, like a piece of E-metal was bent on the back side of the roof, just random stuff like that. Some of the flashing around the chimney was kind of flashed poorly, but then again, it was there, it was caulked, it was counter-flashed, things like that.
And then there's the issue that the board themselves brought up when they looked at the pictures, that there was massive amounts of wood construction, in which they're not licensed to do. So we all agree at this point, the shingles are nailed to the plywood, but is the plywood nailed to the framing? And there was a massive amount of reconstruction work due to termites. And I knew that when I bought the house.
So what Mr. Garnett is referencing in relation to not having the license, if all of the decking were to have been stripped from the trusses, then that takes a residential, at minimum, contractor to perform. The photos that were provided both by the owner and Mr. Soto, you can see that not all of the decking was removed from the structure. So Mr. Soto's license did cover the replacement of pieces of decking.
And you're still holding $4,000 of their
Yes.
money, okay? We, is there a question of code violation or impropriety?
I have not heard of any code violations that we can address here. And I would think that we would not be able to move it further to disciplinary hearing. So I'd make a motion, of course, we can have discussion, that we dismiss.
The motion's made, is there a second?
Second.
Motion made and second. Any further discussion?
To be clear, the motion would be to not find probable cause,
Yes,
because right now you don't have anything to dismiss.
yeah.
So, just making sure.
Any further discussion? Being none, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, like sign. Being none, the motion to not find probable cause is approved.
I do have one final question. The work was guaranteed for 5 years, and a warranty was transferable. if they do not honor that, is it the
You can
procedure
come
for me to
back.
come back here again?
You can come back. Yes.
Okay,
You can
thank
file
you.
another complaint.
All right. Thank you, Bobby, and, I appreciate the time. It was an education, and it could be worse. We could all be down at the villages knocking around a little white ball into alligator country. So I appreciate it.
Thank you, sir.
Okay.
Item 8.2.
Mr. Whitmire, you don't have to remain present for the rest of this hearing. I know you probably got a lot that you can do.
Thank you. Thank you for your presence.
Thank you. Our next item is James Howard, doing business as James F. Howard Construction, Inc., state certified, license number CGC 1517819, contractor competency board complaint number 22080148 COM. It's in regard to Natasha Davis, the homeowner complainant at 7872 Sumter Street, Pensacola, Florida 32534. Proper notice was sent to the respondent. Ms. Davis, are you present today? Yes, ma'am. Thank you. And are you going to provide testimony for this hearing? Yes. Mr. Davis, are you going to provide testimony as well? Thank you. Mr. Howard, are you present today? Yes. And are you going to provide testimony for this hearing? Yes. Thank you. If both parties, and you as well, Mr. Davis, if you'll all stand and be sworn in by the court reporter.
Do you solemnly swear the testimony about to give today will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
And just a reminder, Ms. Reber remains sworn. Ms. Reber, was a formal complaint filed with the board, and on what date was it filed?
Yes, there was, August 26 of 2022.
Were you able to communicate with Ms. Davis about the case?
Yes, I was.
And were you able to communicate with Mr. Howard about the case?
I notified him.
And did Ms. Davis provide any supporting documentation, and is it attached to the agenda as backup?
She did, and it is attached.
And did Mr. Howard provide any supporting documentation, and is it attached to the agenda as backup?
He did not.
Were permits obtained? If so, when, and what are their current status?
An original permit for demolition was obtained February 9th of 2022, and that permit expired without any inspections. The permit, when Ms. Davis filed the complaint in August of 2022, was reinstated, but also expired again with no inspections.
At this time, staff would request that all documentation attached to the agenda as backup be moved into evidence.
So moved.
Is there a second? Motion made and seconded. Any discussion? Being none, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, like sign. Being none, motion to approve. All documentation being entered into evidence.
Ms. Reber, were you able to assign any alleged violations to the case? If so, please state each violation and your justification.
Yes, I was. Code Section 1837D4, failure to get applicable inspections under his permit. Code Section 1837D8. This case involved not only demolition, but an application for new home build where allegedly a deposit was made against the new home contract. Code Section 1837D10. It appears that Mr. Howard has just abandoned this project. I went out and took a look at it, and a lot of the debris from the demolition remain on site, and I do have pictures of that.
Any further?
I apologize. Ms. Davis, this is your opportunity to come to the podium, state your name and address for the record, and address the board in regard to the complaint.
My name is Natasha Davis. My address is 1002 Lake Terrace Avenue, Pensacola, Florida, 32505. With the case that we have with, I entered into a contract with Mr. Howard in November of 2021, and he was supposed to do the demolition of a house, and he was supposed to knock down a house and build me a new house. But the initial deposit was $10,000, and $5,000 was supposed to be for the demolition, and the other $5,000 was for the allowances in the house. And there was nothing. He did not complete the. Well, he did. He started the demolition, but he didn't complete it because it's still debris down in the house. He started in February 21st of 2022, and then there was nothing done. He knocked the house halfway down in February of 21. I called Mr. Howard in March to see what was going on with the property. He told me the guy that had doing the property, his demolition guy, was in the hospital, and he said he would work on it, but nothing was done until June. In June, then they knocked the other half of the house down, and then from June to September, there was nothing, no activity or anything done, and the house was just there with all the debris that still was left on the ground. In July, we were supposed to discuss the plans for the new house and have the foundation poured, but none of that happened. On August the 1st, I sent him a certified letter saying that there would be other actions taken if he didn't start the work. So August the 9th, his first permit expired. Then that's August 26th is when I filed a complaint with the board. In September, he sent me an email stating that the house would be completed by December 31st of 22, but that hasn't happened. The debris from the house has sat from June until September, and then in September, they started picking up the debris. And so they did pick up some of the debris, but it's still like a concrete slab and other like debris and bricks and some stuff that's still left on the ground.
Any questions? Thank you.
Mr. Howard, this is your opportunity to come to the podium, state your name and address for the record, and address the complaint with the board.
My name is James Howard. My address is 1310 Missouri Boulevard, Pensacola, Florida. I did contract out initially to qualify Ms. Davis for the program. There was a limit on the amount at the time, $220,000 for the program that was trying to qualify her for. In the meantime, her house had to be tore down, so we went into a contract with an agreement. The $10,000 was to demo the house. And she made changes for the plans, so we had to order plans. So plans was ordered, demo of the house was demoed. During that time, one of the guys got sick and was hospitalized. Took a minute for him to come back or whatever, but at the same time, the delay, I never received I explained to Ms. Davis, the property has to be conveyed over in order for my credit line to do the construction. I'm saving her money by doing the construction. We have to have the property conveyed over to the construction company. And we have to have a confirmed takeout. I spoke to her loan officer numerous of times, hey, I need that letter, I need a confirmed takeout in order to move forward. So that's why it was no real rush to demo the house, because we don't even have all the paperwork to get to the house. At the same time, I made an agreement with the $10,000 to save Ms. Davis money again. When we are at that point, we'll look at it as though already you've already had your deposit down, because the program required a $1,000 deposit. But the $10,000 for the demo of the house, we never made it. The plans were bought, developed, engineered, done, and so I've spent more than $15,000 on the project, but I still I never had what I need to go and get the financing. So everything just stopped. She went through Better Business Bureau. I spoke with the investigator several times about this project. I was hospitalized in February when it expired. I explained to the investigator that the debris that they're speaking of is a step that went to the house, that one of the guys was on the demo crew wanted the step because it wasn't broken, rather than break it up and haul it off. I have receipts. I don't have it here today because I just found out about this weekend. I have receipts where dumpsters over $3,000 worth of dumpsters was with the dates and all that when that was done. So all this about it just sitting it set a period when the guy was in the hospital, but we had dumpsters come in because we had to hire another crew to come in to finish up the work. But at that point, I was just spoke with the investigator. I was just trying to finish the demo. Didn't look like we were going to build because I don't have what I need to do the construction.
Any questions?
Board, I will add that, as I spoke about the demolition permits require 2 inspections. One, a pre-demolition inspection to make sure all utilities and everything are cut or secure. Neither one of the permits that Mr. Howard pulled got pre-demolition inspections, and none of them have obviously not finalized out since the debris is left on the site. And just one addition to the contract, it's my understanding, because I've dealt with another contractor on this, contract for housing is through the Escambia County Housing Authority Urban Fill Program. And I understand that program to be something that the contractor qualifies for. He may be accurate when he's talking about transfer of land, but it's my understanding from talking to them that it's not the homeowner that qualifies, it's the contractor at a special rate, and he in turns sells to his client. Also, the contract is in there, but I could not find a determination that $5,000 was demo and $5,000 was for the upgrades. Ms. Davis said that $5,000 was there's an allowance on the contract, and she chose more expensive items, and so that was her payment for that. But the contract is in there.
This is the first time I ever heard of that. Never heard about a $5,000 allowance. Now, I also sent a letter in to you and to the state explaining all that. And you said you don't.
I don't have anything.
And you and I talked about it, and then we talked about when you first initially came to me and said that I should have had a pre-inspection. I said, well, I've been doing this 23 years. I've never had a pre-inspection. I've tore down hundreds of houses. And you said, well, from now on, you have to do that. Well, all I did was renew the permit. It expired. You said I should come through you. I was here at the county to get some other permits. I reactivated the permit because the deadline was up. I did what I thought was, what you normally do.
Yes, sir, you did.
And I talked to you about it.
Right, you did, but you also let it expire again, so you've had 2 permits.
Like I said, I just found out about this 2 days ago. I was hospitalized in December. I was sick with the flu. January, I was hospitalized with another situation that kept me pretty much most of the month, so I was way behind. Then in February, my wife had a spinal surgery. So it did expire. And as a builder, what was left was concrete step. Any other debris, if there was some trash or whatever, to my knowledge, all that was moved. I mean, when we get ready to do the foundation, we'll rake it or whatever, but the house is completely gone, and it's been completely gone.
There's pictures that were taken last week of the property, and I'm sure the building official can confirm if there should be pre-demolition inspections. I got that information from a site inspector who said in a permit there are 2 inspections, and one is checking to make sure. That may not be something he does, but it is my understanding there's 2 inspections.
Do we have calls?
My contract's very clear. There was never an allowance for, that was the demo of the house. You can't demo the house and get engineer plans, engineering site plan, all that for $10,000. I explained that to the client. I said, we've spent more money than you have in it.
Do we have a copy of his contract on file?
Yes, it is in
Can you
the
pull that for us?
documentation.
So the violation that we're looking at is not having the inspection, pre and post inspection?
Yes, violation of state building codes, 1837D4, and abandonment, 1837D10. The mismanagement or misconduct, I could only go by what I read. This contract did include demolition. As Ms. Davis testified, the $10,000 payment, she indicated $5,000 of that was, there is an allowances in here.
Whoa, whoa, stop. I don't see any 5,000.
I think
There's a section on administration of allowances, but it doesn't specify any particular allowance.
Tim, can you speak to the board in regard to the inspection requirements for a demolition permit?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, it
Yeah.
depends on the situation. Typically, if there are other structures close by, what's gonna be demoed, we'll go out and look
Yeah.
before, and give advice on, you know, how it should be done, or just witness that, there's no damage on the existing buildings, not on the property, to be able to say if it was damaged by the demo contractor or not. But typically, it's, something that decision is made when the, application is brought in.
So would he have known at that point that he would have had to have those inspections, or could they have been waived, or?
Yeah, I
Not
don't know
required.
that I would hold his feet to the fire on that. It could have been that the person that took it in knew that, there was no structures close, and I don't even know. There may have been structures that were closed and may have been advised that an inspection was required, but, yeah, I don't know that, it's not a routine thing. It's a case by case.
Okay, thank you.
Most of the houses I've tore down are in the city, but that's the first, and I said that to you when I talked. I said, I've never heard of that, but, you know, I want to do whatever we need to do. But the next time, the next permit that was supposed to be a continuation or a renewal or whatever, where it expired. And I told you, I was here in the county, I was pulling some other permits, and I renewed that one. 'Cause
And you
said come
did,
through you.
and they are good for 6 months, and
Right.
that time
Can you
expired
go back to
again.
the code violation? Probable. Okay.
So the abandonment is just not taking the steps and stuff, the debris? Is that the abandonment?
There's a step that was 4 feet long, 2 steps or 3 steps that was left there because someone wanted it, but the machine broke, the hydraulic, in order to pick it up and put it on the tractor. From my understanding, that was the only thing that should, now there was, I was expecting to get the paperwork I need to start the house.
Right.
You know, so we never got to that point. And if there was there was never a $5,000 because the program required a $1,000 deposit. You couldn't go over that. You couldn't go over $220,000 on the sale of the house at that time. So I don't know where those numbers come from.
Chair, I believe the abandonment was in relation to the contract in total. Yes, he performed the demolition, but the contract was for him to also construct the structure. Parties can speak more to that, and I believe they talked about this specific program, and there were some issues about entering into the program. That's where the abandonment stemmed from. There was never, it didn't move forward in any way.
But he would have had to have the takeout from his conversation in order to qualify for the program. And if this is my understanding, explain if I'm wrong, the person wanting the house built would have to qualify for financing post-construction.
Correct.
So I don't know if there's a delay, and yeah, we can have you come back up and speak to it. I'm just trying to figure out the process, okay? That's my question.
And
Thank
you were never approved for the program?
No, I'm approved for the program, but in order for me to finalize everything and complete the construction loan, I have to have the property conveyed over to the construction company, and I have to have a confirmed takeout of approval. Those are the two things that I didn't get in order to move forward with the construction loan.
Okay.
And I explained it to her, and she says, well, at one point, she filed a complaint with the Better Business Bureau, with Tallahassee and the county, and she said something about getting her money back. I said, well, we spent on the demo more, plus you changed the plans. We made changes on the plans. So I sent those in to the engineer. At that time, everything was backed up. It took us a long time to get plans and several things. I started noticing that when we did speak, there was a little difference in our communication and what I had wrote down, because the house went from one point to changes made. Now we have a 4-bedroom, 3-bathroom house that's went from 1,800 to 2,000 square feet. That's way over the program, $220,000. So there were some things that was because of the time that was getting lost. But I couldn't move in. I can't move without those things, in order to
You
get
gotta have the
security.
property conveyed to you.
Correct.
To start construction.
Correct.
Do you have any proof of how much money you've spent?
I do. I don't have it with me. I can pull up the dumpsters, the equipment fees, and paying the guys that did do demo, and engineering.
Is there a reason why you didn't get it submitted before this hearing?
I just found out about this hearing Sunday
Okay.
or Monday. But yeah, I have all that information.
Any other questions? Thank you.
Good morning. My name is Dr. Davis. My address is 6020 Zonberg Drive, Pensacola, Florida. First off, under this urban field, I've built several homes on there. I built over 7 homes in that urban field program. So I'm very much familiar with it and have done it. But the thing is, before this board is not the urban field program. The thing is, before this board is whether he violated 1837 D4 and 1837 D10. We're talking about permitting. I understand health issues. I understand work. I've done it all, have it all. But the bottom line is, when you pull a permit, you're required to complete that permit. And that is a question before this board. Did you complete the permit? Regardless of the timing, regardless of how much it costs. I've done costs too, and this board can be very well. I brought issues before this board myself, as well as Tim can confirm. I have lost quite a bit of money trying to complete a project. That's that's business. Sometimes you do lose, but that's not the question on this board, whether he made money or lost money. The question is, you had a permit. That permit was not completed. That permit was not done. The other thing is, he's saying now that he has all these expenses and everything else. Whether you knew it Sunday or whether you knew it Monday, it's still your responsibility. Whatever you want this board to consider, you have to bring it. It's like Judge Judy said, if you don't bring it on the day of trial, it's too late. It's too late. This board cannot now say, okay, he can't tell the board, hey, I spent all this money, I spent this money, I lost this money. You lose sometimes, and sometimes you don't. I've lost money, not just thousands. I've lost millions in doing projects over the course of 20-some years. That's the case that's business. But the thing is, he abandoned the project. Now he's saying that it's only 2 steps. Well, if it's only 1 step, the project is not completed. It doesn't matter whether it's 1 step, whether it's 3 steps, it's not completed. And that is the bottom line, is that this board did consider, did you follow the procedure? Did you get those things? The other thing is, you're saying that it's not supposed to be a pre-inspection. Yes, it is. You
Well, we
call
just-
811.
I'm sorry, we just had testimony from the.
It's not held to your feet is not held to the fire for it. But you're supposed to call 811, get it all, make sure there's no utilities, nothing else is on the
Okay, so,
thing.
so your comments is you're looking at code 4 and code 10?
I'm saying that the board need to be looking at what the violation is.
Right,
4 and 10.
4 and 10. Okay, abandonment is he has not removed the steps from the property.
See, you're saying steps, that's what he's telling you is steps.
I'm asking you.
No,
Is
it's
it
not just steps. It's
Okay, what else?
It's demolition, period. The project is not cleared enough to even start building a new home. Bottom line, you have to demo it, you have to move everything out, you also have to root rake it, you have to get ready to be built on it. It can't be built on. And even if it was step, I'll say again, even if it was one step, it's still abandonment. It doesn't matter, it doesn't, in that code, it does not state the B. It doesn't say, okay, you can have 1 step, 2 step, it doesn't give you amount. It says abandonment, period. You didn't complete the job. He's had plenty of time to do those permits, and he has not. He's extended the permit and not done. He's saying, okay, I had health issues, had this here, had that. I understand that, and I go with him on
But
that.
was he anticipating building a house on the property and
Yes, sir.
then completing all that? Coming
All
to
that
place?
was done in the contract. That's his contract, was a build, was a demo, then build. That's the urban field program. You demo, if it's a demo, you get the permit completed, and then build. So
Okay.
even if he said the property was not conveyed, even if the property was conveyed, you still could not build because the demo was not done. And the demo is not complete. He has abandoned the project. And again, I mean, no disrespect when I say this, whether this board, whether he met the requirements of, she met the requirements of urban field, he's saying that what this wasn't conveyed, that wasn't conveyed, that's not before this board. The board
He
has
couldn't
nothing to do
start
with that.
construction. He could not start construction until he was allowed to start construction by having the property conveyed to him.
You know, if you want to get into that, then I'm asking this board to continue this. Because again, he's saying this wasn't done, that wasn't done, but he has not provided you any proof, and Ms. Davis has not came and tell you she has not. I think also, if you're going to continue, if you want to look at what urban field requires you to do, then let me bring the whole project to you and let it read it out to you. Because again, he's only giving you portions of it that has to be done.
Yeah, but
Because
all we're considering is the violation of the building code and the abandonment.
Exactly. And
Okay.
don't consider
So I don't
urban
need any
field.
of the other stuff. I just need
Yes.
those two things. Thank you.
That's what I'm saying. I'm saying that he did not complete the project. It is abandoned. He has left it. He's had 2 permits. He's had 1 permit extended. That has been expired. All the permits have been expired. It has been abandoned for all means and purposes.
Mr. Chairman,
Yeah.
and this wouldn't go against anybody's argument, but just to clarify, if a permit for a structure is pulled to be built and there's an existing structure that has to be torn down, we don't require a separate demo permit. But it may be the policy of the community redevelopment requirements for that. I'm not sure. Or if you want to get started early and then, you know, your plans aren't approved or aren't even developed yet, that would be another reason. But one permit would handle both if the project was going to be done all at once.
Thank you, Tim.
But wouldn't that 1 permit, Tim, wouldn't that be he has to get a building permit? The building permit will cover, the building permit will cover
Absolutely.
demolition. He didn't get a building permit. He got a demolition permit. Now, I've done this. If you want to do demolition and building, yes, you can do it all in the one permit. But when you pull a demolition permit, you can't get the building permit until the demolition permit is completed, inspected, and done.
Yeah, well, we wouldn't hold up that. Now, I would say you couldn't get an inspection for the new building permit, but we could issue a demo permit, and before that's taken care of, a final's called for, we could issue a building permit, and that's just a customer service policy, so we don't hold things up, you know, for not a very good reason.
But could he get a CO without having all the permits inspected?
No.
See me? So even if he got the building permit, he still couldn't get a CO until all the permits have been what? Cleared, inspected,
Well, it
and
would-
done.
Well, you can't
It
go
wouldn't
get
be a CO, it would-
without a building.
It would be a certificate of completion, which is,
Which
yeah.
means that if he had a demolition permit still outstanding out there, the CO could not be issued.
Mr. Chair.
Go ahead, Christie.
I'm sorry, Mr. Lister had a question. He usually hits it on the
You
head.
supersede me.
No, go ahead, and I'll wait till your comment.
I'm trying to wrap my brain around this thing is, if Mr. Howard had of root rate, then there would not be an abandonment.
If he had moved,
But his position is if he can't get the next phase, then you gotta stop here. So he didn't, from what I'm understanding from you, yeah, he didn't root rake the finalizing of getting it prepared for the new construction. according to pictures, it appears that he's not done that.
It's not just root rate, there's other debris out there also,
Well,
period.
I'm just using that, in other words,
Yeah.
that step and whatever it is and root rate, in other words, to get it prepared for the new construction, that was not done. So that's where you're considering abandonment, is because he simply didn't finish the site work?
I'm considering abandonment because he pulled a permit for the demolition, and the demolition permit has not been inspected and in turn passed. And that permit since then
So
has
he's not completed it, though?
He has not completed it, period.
So we can't, I don't know if we can put him in violation until he's finalized the permit.
How can he finalize a permit that now has expired?
They renew the permits, but I don't think we can find somebody for an expired permit that hasn't been, the job has not been finished. Is what I'm alluding to. I know there's a catch-22 in here somewhere, and I'm not trying to complicate, I'm trying to figure a way out.
I just want to recommend that Tim Tolbert is our expert in this area, and I'm not sure what your expertise is. I'm not sure what your doctorate is in, but Tim Tolbert is the expert in the area, so the board probably needs to address those types of questions to Mr. Tolbert. I apologize because I don't know what your doctorate is in.
That's
It
right.
may be in
My doctor
construction.
is not in construction.
Okay.
I'll tell you that.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, permit good for 6 months. When it expires, there is a period you can request an extension in writing. After about the third one, you gotta have a really good reason. But that's my personal policy. First time, dog ate my homework. Second time, a little more. Third time, there's gotta be a great reason. It could be a court case. Have done 3 extensions before, but it has to be something significant. But if the permit's expired again, then that would be a third, I believe a third, or would that be a second extension?
He's extended it once.
Okay.
Original
So
permit, extension.
He's still able to do the job. The permit has been extended.
How long is it, do we know how long it's been expired?
It expired again, I'm sorry.
He had a reinstatement, not an extension.
Correct, a reinstatement on August 24th, 2022, so 6 months from then.
Typically, your max is 90 days to ask for an extension.
So February, that would have expired, this new one.
But it's not an active permit now.
I'm sorry?
It's not an active permit now.
But
No,
he
sir,
has
it's
90
not.
day, he has 90 days from February to extend that.
Okay. Hi. So, if you don't know, I'm the division manager of permitting and licensing as well. So what Mr. Howard had was a reinstatement of his permit, which allows for 180 days. The expiration of that was on February 24th. And so it's actually should read 2023. So it recently expired again. He would need to get another reinstatement, which has to be approved by the building official. It's at the discretion of the building official. So right now, this permit sits as expired.
But he still has the opportunity to reinstate it.
He could request a
Yeah,
reinstatement,
that's what I'm
yes.
saying. He has that opportunity.
Yes, and I'm pretty easy, especially the first and second one.
Okay.
So he can re-extend it and complete the inspection so someone else can continue with a job down the road.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
May I make one suggestion to kind of like resolve this? That the board in turn put this in advance for so many, continue it and give Mr. Howard opportunity to again request another permit, and then at that time, finish his work.
Thank you for your suggestion. Entertain a motion to extend this complaint to allow Mr. Howard to complete the job.
Can I have a comment before we make a motion?
No. You can have comments after the motion. Is there a second?
Did anybody motion?
No one made a motion. I'll make a
Anybody-
motion.
okay,
I haven't
you
made it
make a
yet.
motion.
I was making a motion to give 90-day extension,
Yeah.
give time for the completion of the project.
Yeah. Is there a second? We can't act without a motion. You gotta have a motion to act.
we can comment on
That's right.
So the motion's failed.
Now then, comment. Go
That
ahead.
has to be your finding, Chairman, that the motion has failed. And then it's open for comment.
The motion's failed.
No. Yay.
So now would be the time for comments.
Mr. Talbert, based on the pictures, the house is gone. I mean, it's demolished. The debris cleanup is basically, as some of the board members have alluded to, is some site cleanup. Would there necessarily be an additional permit required to clean up a site like that, that maybe has miscellaneous trash and small debris, or would it just be allowed to be done without another permit?
Well, typically, if there's debris left from the demo, that we would require that to be cleaned up. With that said, we do honor the scope of work. For example, we have issued demo permits with the slab staying in place, and they anticipate to build back on the existing slab. It depends on the scope of work that defines the demo. But typically, if there's debris left, we would fail the inspection and require that to be cleaned up.
Thank you. That's all my comments.
Entertain a motion to extend this for 90 days. Huh?
That motion failed, sir.
The extension motion already failed. So you would probably see if there's any other motions that would
Yeah, but there
come before.
wasn't a complete motion, we never had a second.
So,
It died for lack of a second.
Yeah,
so,
but it might pass now.
so if we modify it, if we modify it to 60 days, would that be a different motion?
Yes.
So for clarification purposes, are we continuing this for 60 days? So,
We want to figure out a way to give him time to either reinstate the permit if he has to, and to get the inspection passed.
so that would be your motion then, to continue this hearing for such and such period of time? Not an extension, it would be to continue the probable cause hearing? Or 1 month, 2
I
months,
make a motion
whatever.
to continue the probable cause hearing for 3 months, to allow time for remediation of the permitting issue and get it inspected.
Is there a second?
Second.
Beautiful. Any discussion?
Mr. Chair, I had my hand up
Yes.
for the motion. If the builder's not able to go forward with this, and he's not been paid for all this, I mean, we're putting him in a position now of going out and spending more money, when he can't go forward without, if I'm understanding this right, he cannot go forward without this land being conveyed to him, and that's not happening. So what do we?
The
What are we
permitting
accomplishing
though
here?
is for demolition, and he hasn't finished that. That's where we are.
Okay.
It's not what does after the permit,
Okay.
after the permit. The permit is for demolition. It's not for building, it's not for building a new building, it's not for doing anything else except cleaning up the property. And that's what this motion's concerning. Any further discussion? Being none, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, like sign. Being none, the motion to extend the probable cause hearing for 60 days?
3 months.
3 months?
He asked for 3 months instead
3
of
months.
90 days,
Okay,
which is a different calculation.
okay.
So we'll find you a date out there at 3 months instead of 90
Okay.
days.
It is approved.
Also, what I was mentioning just now, is that perhaps you would want to have someone from the actual organization come in and explain to you how the system works, instead of having someone who's not an expert in the field. None of us are experts with the urban infill. And the builder, if you could have your you could request that your investigation includes someone contact the urban infill program and have someone here at the next hearing, and that would, if there's to be a hearing, then that would assist you in understanding how the system works, because I think we're about to have another witness on that.
But I think I appreciate probably nice to have the education, but as far as we're concerned, is it abandoned and can it be completed and finished out? So I don't know if we're to the construction phase process or not.
Part of
We're
the
not there.
complaint included that the contract has not proceeded because of this program. That was part of the complaint, and that was what was referenced in the second,
Yeah, but that's not a code violation.
it was what was referenced in the second count of mismanagement or misconduct. Because this has not proceeded because of this program. So that is something that, I know we heavily looked at the first and third items, but what was referenced in that second item included the urban infill program.
Okay.
So in the board, you have the power to order an investigation, and you can outline some of the things that would be included in that investigation. So what I was recommending to the board is that you may want to consider having someone from the urban info program come in to testify and help explain what would be involved in that count too.
That's a good idea, and let's do it.
Thank you.
Remember, we've got 3 months to do it in.
Well, that's more than 90 days, so that's nice.
Any further comments on this issue? We'll move to the next item.
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman. This item is James Howard doing business as James F. Howard Construction, state registered license number RC 29027807, Contractor Competency Board complaints number 230333, COM. It's in regard to Dylan and Chandra Carlson, homeowner complainants at 11152 Bridge Creek Drive, Pensacola, Florida 32506. Proper notice was sent to the respondent. If you recall, this is the result of a directive from the board to bring this to a probable cause hearing. David is he is assisting us with our live stream. Hey, David, do we have Mr. and Ms. Carlson through Microsoft Teams?
She hasn't called in.
She's not on there.
So we can't do anything right.
Can we take a second and Melissa has her contact information. Can we circle back to this hearing?
Yes.
Go on to the next one?
Move on to the
While
next.
Melissa does that. Mr. Howard, we're going to take a moment and contact the complainant in this case. They were to attend by Microsoft Teams meeting because they do not live here. So Melissa's going to make a contact with them, and we're going to move to the next hearing and then circle back to this one, okay?
Yes, can I ask a question?
Yes, sir.
I thought we already had that hearing. What is this hearing for?
So this hearing was a directive from the board because the other hearing encompassed your state certified license. And this one is actually against your local license, which is what you pulled the permit under, for the roof. Okay? So, we're gonna move on to item 4.
Yeah.
Jonathan Pruitt, doing business as Addison Riley LLC, state registered, should read registered license number RC 29027807, Contractor Competency Board complaints number 230331 COM. It's in regard to Carl Barber, homeowner complainant at 4618 Baybrook Drive, Pensacola, Florida 32514. Proper notice was sent to the respondent. Hold on just a second. Mr. Barber, are you present today? Mr. Barber does not appear to be present. And Mr. Pruitt, are you present today?
I'm his legal counsel here on his behalf. I'd ask for an opportunity to be heard if the board will allow it at the proper time.
It's my understanding that Mr. Pruitt received notice at a address that was not updated with our licensing division. And he did make me aware that he was going to be sending representation to address the board in that matter. If you'd like to come forward and go ahead and address the board.
Good morning. My name is Matthew Couch, attorney at Moorhead Law Group. Here on behalf of Mr. Pruitt and Addison Riley LLC. My business address is 127 Palafox Place, Suite 200. As you heard, Mr. Pruitt could not be here today. He apologizes profusely. There was a mix-up with the address that the notice was sent to. It was sent to an address on Creighton Road where Addison Riley hasn't operated for a couple of years. Mr. Pruitt qualifies Addison Riley both in his capacity as a roofing contractor and a general contractor. The address for the general contracting component had been updated. Apparently, the roofing contractor component address had not been updated. That is the reason for the mix-up, given that this issue arises out of a roofing contract. As we've noted, Mr. Barber, the complainant, is not here today. I'd be happy to answer any questions that the board has about this. I don't think that there's any probable cause for the alleged violations. I will note that this dispute is in active litigation, Escambia County Circuit Court, Civil Division. That legal action arises out of Addison Riley's claim for payment, or non-payment, rather. Mr. Barber owes Addison Riley approximately $10,000, approximately half of the contract sum for the roof that was installed at his property. Mr. Barber has not raised any counterclaims in that legal action. He has alleged certain defects and other issues that he would claim may offset the payment. However, again, he has not alleged or asserted any counterclaims for affirmative relief in that action. Again, happy to answer any questions that the board may have, but based on the evidence that's already submitted here today, I do not believe there's any probable cause.
Do we have the complaint?
Yes, sir.
Can you bring it up?
Do you want the complaint or the investigation?
The complaint.
Investigative report.
You want this or the investigative report?
You haven't given your investigative
I
report, okay? I
haven't.
thought I'd make sure I
She
didn't
hasn't
miss
given her
anything.
testimony
Okay.
yet.
If you want to go ahead and give that, then we'll ask questions after that.
You can have a seat right up front if you want to. Okay. So we'll go to the investigative report. There we go.
Just give you my report. You can ask me a question.
Go ahead.
Okay. This complaint was received on February 10th of 2023. Mr. Barber has submitted some documentation, and I have not heard anything from Addison Riley. The alleged violations are 1837D4, pertains to the permit is expired and the roof has not had a final building inspection. And 1837D8, Mr. Barber is alleging damage to his pool liner and the chimney, I believe it's called a chimney cap, installed incorrectly, causing it to back up into his home.
Has it been inspected?
No, sir, the permit is expired and a final inspection was never done.
Well, if it's final, if the permit's expired and there has not been an inspection, then we do have a code violation.
You may want to allow her, his attorney, to respond to the testimony he just heard. Mr. Couch?
Thank you. The contract between the parties that was submitted by Mr. Barber does contain a clause saying that final inspection will not be requested until final payment has been received. There was a payment dispute between the parties. The communication broke down, and I believe that's what led to failure to request the final inspection. However, Addison Riley, I believe as of yesterday afternoon, has gone ahead and taken steps to reactivate the permit, and will seek a final inspection as soon as possible once that happens. To the extent that this board does want to move forward with a hearing on this matter, given Mr. Pruitt's absence, I would request a continuance until the time that he can attend and/or that the litigation concludes.
Our investigator is currently checking on the status, whether or not there's been any actions taken as far as trying to get a new, or updating or getting a new permit, correct? But we have granted, this board does have the power to grant a continuance.
Yes. Go ahead, let's do it.
Make a motion, we continue this hearing to the next meeting.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. Any discussion? Being none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign. Being none, the motion to continue the hearing till the next meeting is approved. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chair.
Any
We-
word on Howard?
I believe if, whenever I was back there with David, they had joined us. They should be up on your screen now, and it's also displayed on the screen in the room as well. Chandra or Dylan, are you there?
Yes.
Yes.
Perfect. Okay, so we're just going to continue on with our hearing. I'm going to read it back in. Hey, there you are. So this item is item number 3, James Howard doing business as James F. Howard Construction, Inc., state registered license number RC 29027807, contractor competency board complaint number 230333 COM. It's in regard to Dylan and Chandra Carlson, the homeowner complainants, at 11152 Bridge Creek Drive, Pensacola, Florida, 32506. Proper notice was sent to the respondent. Chandra and Dylan are present via Microsoft Teams. Mr. Howard is present. At this time, I'm going to have the parties sworn in. We cannot see Dylan. Is that an issue for swearing in, counsel? I see that Chandra, we can see her.
Right, I mean, as far as swearing them in remotely, it doesn't affect it. They're still, they've testified before.
They have testified before.
So you could just have them remain under oath, ask them to remain under oath from their previous testimony too.
Okay. And Mr. Howard was previously sworn in as well in the prior hearing, so.
Move forward.
Correct. So all parties have previously been sworn in regard to this case, so.
So what she's trying to help you understand is that you were previously sworn, you were still under oath. This is still a proceeding in which requirements under perjury attach. Do you understand that?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
We can see your picture, but we can't see you moving your mouth or anything like that, so I don't know if that's just a picture maintained or we have a problem with our digital.
You have a problem with the digital.
It's okay, we can still hear them.
Yes.
So we're gonna move forward at this time. Come on, pick back forward. And just a reminder that Ms. Reber was previously sworn in. Ms. Reber, was a complaint filed with this board, and on what date was it filed?
Yes, this complaint has transferred over from her, from their original complaint from November 7th of 2022.
And were you able to communicate with the complainant about this case?
Yes, I was.
And were you able to communicate with the respondent about this case?
Yes, I was.
And did the complainant provide supporting documentation, and is it attached to the agenda?
They did, and it is attached.
And did the respondent provide any supporting documentation, and is it attached to the agenda?
Mr. Howard's not provided any additional information, or I haven't had any communication, but he was present at the last hearing.
And were permits obtained? If so, when and what are their status?
A permit was obtained, but the final inspection on that permit failed December 27th of 2022, and it's never had any additional inspections.
And were there comments in that final inspection failure?
There were, the inspector stated that the roof is applied directly to shingles. Product approval installation instructions require them to be applied with batten parallel with eaves and 90 degrees to roof trusses. I'm not sure if this board recalls, there was quite a bit of discussion about that. Both parties were directed to check where materials were bought, which is the Baker Metal. And the building official did tell Mr. Howard if he could get confirmation from the manufacturer that this would be acceptable, they'd be willing to relook at it. But to my knowledge, Mr. Howard has not reported anything back on that.
At this time, staff would request that the documentation attached to the agenda as backup be moved into evidence.
So moved.
Is there a second? Second. Motion made and seconded. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, like sign. Being none, all documentation will be moved into evidence.
Ms. Reber, were you able to assign any alleged violations to this case? Please state each violation and your justification.
Yes, I was. Code Section 1837C1. This does pertain to failure to correct any violations under the permit. Code Section 1837C2. This came up in the last hearing that Mr. Howard had subbed out the work to a uncertified or unregistered roofing crew. 1837D8, the Dillons, the Carlsons allege that they sustained damages with the home leaking, damages to their pool, and some other issues. Code Section 1837D9H. It was also testified that there wasn't any direct supervision of that roofing crew that was on site. Code Section 1837D15C. There was actually no permit pulled at the beginning of this project. The permit was not obtained until after the roof had already been installed and the complaint was filed.
Mr. and Ms. Carlson, this is your opportunity to address the board in regard to the complaint.
Perfect. Good morning. Thanks for seeing us from Minnesota. Since we were there in March, we've had no contact with Mr. Howard. Nothing's been done with the house. And actually, after we left the first week in March, my parents were there, and now the roof is leaking into where the furnace is held. So there must be a leak around the exhaust maybe or something. We've already had problems with the boots that were in place. If you remember, we had water coming through our microwave. But other than that, nothing's been done, no communication, no trying to correct what was wrong. So it kind of just still stands where it was.
Any questions of the Dillons?
And Mr. Carlson, do you have anything to add?
Or- Being none? Okay.
Mr. Howard, this is your opportunity to address the board in regard to the complaint.
After the last hearing, I spoke with Ms. Dillon several times and Mr. Dillon. We tried to schedule a time to go out to the site to bring some more people to try and see how we could fix the problem or determine if there was a problem. During that time is when I got sick, and I spoke with Ms. Dillon and said, hey, I'm out sick, but when we get this schedule, when we get to the site, now I made 2 appointments, but I was hospitalized right after that, and I haven't had any more conversation with her. I was under the impression that I was given the time that there was a violation for the permit, which I filed for the permit. It was just that the computer system, I never got a bill where I paid the bill. So I'm thinking I had a permit, but nevertheless, once I found that out, I got the permit. So I was under the impression, last hearing, I was found guilty of the permit. I was found not guilty of the other stuff. Then I received a call saying about the license. There's a different number that I need to come back in. But from my understanding, the permit is still active, and I'm still have the intentions to go and resolve whatever matter to where it passes the inspection. That's what I thought the last hearing gave me an opportunity to go and fix the problem to where it passes inspection.
The permit is still active. The failed inspection was on December 27th of 2022. So there is still time with regard to the license number. He was brought before this board under his state license, which is not what the permit was pulled under. And once I did some more research, we realized we had him before the board under his state certified license, when in fact, when he pulled the permit, he pulled it under his local building license.
So that's square right now.
That's why we have him back before, and when he was here previous, there was other information in his testimony, and that the board discovered is why we've come back with some other probable violations.
And if you recall, the Carlsons were present and addressed the
Yeah.
board in regard to this complaint and requested that it be brought back before this board because no movement had been made. They showed up at a hearing, requested that the board bring the case back in regard to his local license, which is what he pulled the permit under.
Okay. So that's where we are now. But the permit's still open.
Yes, sir.
But you haven't fixed the problem.
No, not yet.
When do you plan to do that?
Immediately.
Did you check the manufacturer to get that clarification, or?
No, like I say, after leaving, I've been out. I've been out, and then the little time that I did come back, I've been playing catch-up with several other jobs.
Well, you are aware that you have to check with them about how it was installed as to whether or not it meets the installation instructions, Baker Metal?
That was not the understanding I had. I stood on the fact that it was not installed incorrectly, and I was there supervising the job. I don't know where that part came from. But I did not check with Baker, and I was under the impression I made an understanding with the homeowners that I would get there and resolve whatever issue either way, whatever it was, the situation was, to where it passes inspection.
The day of that hearing, it was a very lengthy hearing. If you all recall, we moved into the other room.
Yeah.
And Mr. Tolbert and Mr. Howard, and I think even Mr. Patel had a lengthy discussion. And Mr. Tolbert did tell Mr. Howard if he could get some information that how he installed it would be in compliance with the manufacturer's code, he would be willing to look at that.
Okay, I think that was my recollection, that you were given the advice to go talk to Baker Metal to see if how you installed it would be approved.
Well, after the hearing, the homeowners and I told them
It
that
wasn't a homeowner, this was directed by the board.
Okay.
But the question is, if Mr. Howard fixes it to permitting, like if you go back in and say, you were wrong in the way you installed it and you fix that, is that what you're saying?
Yes.
Versus trying to see if you can
Correct.
get a waiver, is what I was understanding.
Well,
Correct.
From this conversation.
Mr. Chairman, whenever a permit's pulled for a roof, we have to have the Florida product approval number, and along with that comes the installation instructions. And if it deviates from that, then, we have no choice but to fail the inspection until we get more information. And we're willing to look at information from the manufacturer that.
Yep, my point is, he still has to get that approval.
Or
he has to get he has to go to Baker Metal and have them say, yes, it's okay.
We would honor that.
Or he just fixes it the
Yes.
way the instructions are.
Correct.
Yeah,
Either or.
that's you.
Correct.
Okay. So we're at
We
that
would-
point. He still has an opportunity to have it. Yes, go ahead.
Carlson's went to Baker Metal, and we have all the paperwork of how it is supposed to be installed. And it's not installed correctly. And upon the hearing that we were at when James was there, we spoke with him and said, yes, we would be willing to give you the opportunity to fix it. And then now we're, 3 months down the line. And the only time we kept communicating with him, have you been to, because he kept telling us, I got to go to the house, got to get somebody there. We want to see what we can do. Go to the house, got to get somebody there, see what we can do every time. I am always saying, please call me back and let me know if you made it or not. And he's never making it there. And I had a friend that lives down there close, and the crew he was not there with the crew the whole time. For one, it took 3 months to do the roof, and he was not there with the crew the whole time. He would pop in and out. But leaving our meeting in December, we gave him until March, and nothing had been done, and that's why we returned in March, and that's why we're back now in April. So the permit is still out, but the fact that if we let the communication die and have him communicate to us, there's no communication, and then it falls back on, well, they won't set anything up. Well, he never shows up.
What are you looking at time-wise to get this job completed?
Right now, 2 weeks.
And the information that you got from Baker, do we have that information?
I can get it to you. I have it, but I have it here.
Okay,
I
what-
assume it's the same information that the building code has, because they showed us exactly what the Escambia building code has, and this is the information we give them.
I
And
think
they
the
said
building
there's
department
no,
has that information.
Do you have a question? Would it be possible to make a motion to move this to probable cause based on the allegations? I mean, at disciplinary hearing, based on the allegations, and during that period of time, he would have the opportunity to remediate the situation?
So what you're asking is you want to have a finding of probable cause?
Yes.
So that would be a motion before the board, and of course, anytime, and that's up to the board, if he remediates, and then at the disciplinary hearing, you determine that
We
he
can
has
dismiss, we
remediated.
can dismiss it.
Yeah, that's
You
what I
can
was
make a
trying to-
determination at that time.
Yeah, kind of a
You don't
question,
nec-
kind of a question to the board as well as yourself, as to, would that be something that would be?
I would support that.
Yeah.
Okay. I make a motion, we move this to disciplinary hearing based on the allegations represented in the complaint or in the inspector's report.
There's a motion, there's a second.
I second.
Motion made and seconded. Any discussion? Being none, all those in favor say aye. Opposed, like sign. Being none, all those, the motion is approved to move it to disciplinary hearing based upon the allegations made in the probable cause hearing.
If you could hold on just a moment, we're going to get the date since we have people remote. So we're going to get the date of the next disciplinary hearing date.
Okay.
The first Wednesday in May is May the 3rd. So it should occur on that date, absent any other circumstances. I know that the chair will not be present on that day, but the vice chair will
Yep.
step in and take his place. But we're looking at May the 3rd.
Any further action? Being
Ms.
none-
Carlson, did you hear that information?
yep, thank
Okay.
you, I appreciate your guys' time.
And is the board going to allow them to continue to appear by,
Virtual means.
That's fine.
if we can get it to work?
Yeah, if it works. Technology is great when it works.
Correct.
Yeah, oh, we got it, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Howard, you know where you're going. You've got your time between now and the May 3rd.
Okay, that's it.
That's it.
Thank you, sir.
All right, thank you.
Didn't we skip an agenda item?
We did, waiting for.
We skipped that agenda item and came back to it. So now we're up to item 5.
James Thompson.
Yes, sir. This item is James Thompson doing business as Deer Point Construction Company Incorporated, state certified license number CBC 1252359, contractor competency board complaint number 230332, COM. It's in regard to Brenda Jacobson Hanson, homeowner complainant at 1235 La Paz Street, Pensacola, Florida, 32506. Proper notice was sent to the respondent. Ms. Hanson, are you present today? Mr. Thompson, are you present today? She is not present. And I think Ms. Reber has an update in regards to this complaint. She received some additional information from Ms. Hanson, and so I
Okay,
think she's going to go
please.
ahead and address the board.
Yes.
Yes, Ms. Hanson and Mr. Thompson have communicated and are trying to work this situation out. Ms. Hanson has asked that she's going to keep in touch with me, and if it becomes necessary to go forward in May, we would do that. So just asking for a continuance to the May 3rd hearing.
Make a motion for a continuance to the May 3rd.
Motion made and seconded to continue this particular complaint till May 3rd. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, like sign. Being none, the motion approved to move this complaint to May 3rd.
Chair, can we take a 5-minute break real quick?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Help, help. Huh?
We don't need to forget he's.
And you have to be here.
Oh, good. She got it. Now, the problem is, you keep making fun of my motions, and nobody else is making motions.
At least I'm getting on the
So,
motion.
yes, I'm trying. So my feelings are hurt.
We need some
but
help.
I'm getting over it. I don't either. It's been a long time.
Hey, there's no
you're
book
good.
been written to decide that.
But he has employees who are I don't think so, but the water. I, Melissa said it was registered, he said it was for a long period of time and recently. And I understand, and I understand exactly what you're saying, but the rules are the rules. And like, had we been notified that the water wasn't licensed, we could have done some more diligence, because, you know, I'm a CPA, and I was responsible for the people that work for me. Now, you don't advertise like that, but I'm responsible for that. And that's what the bills say, the bill payments are very similar, the 489 is very similar to the CPA. That's why I wasn't uncomfortable with filing a license. I was certified in 3 years. So each state is a little different. Yeah, they really are. I mean, I read the statutes, I'm going, wow. And then here's the thing, there are specific rules that say, well, if you certify
Accurate. I did say that.
Yes, and that's just why, once again, we never even heard the name.
We won't hold it against you.
So,
I had thinking, because I was getting there,
when
put
he
stuff,
did the
oh, just right there.
program,
As I was putting stuff in that box, I was like, oh, there's always more than the way out. And then I walked in and I was like, they're all here? What happened?
before he got licensed, he understood once he got licensed. Yes, but he didn't change the permits number and the COs.
Ready?
Now, there is.
Board's back in session.
Yes, sir, Chair. So if you recall, we had an item that was during Board Secretary's status update the building official requested to be held until he came in. And so here he is.
My apologies, Mr. Chairman, for being late. And after conversation just a minute ago, I wanted to go over some of the problems with the structure, but I don't think that's the problem, that's not the issue right now. Okay. Well, I guess you didn't have to wait on me after all. My apologies again.
So just to circle back, this case is Mr. Moody filed a complaint against Hallie Lovato doing business as High Point DBR LLC. Earlier I spoke about how Tyler Weldon was a qualifier when this house was built back in 2012. It was CO'd under Tyler Weldon's license. Everything had to do with Mr. Weldon. However, this complaint was filed against Mr. Lovato, who is the current qualifier of High Point DBR LLC. Mr. Weldon no longer qualifies that company at all, and that license is inactive. So we were looking for direction from the board in regard to this complaint. The responsible party for the build, for the construction, the qualifier no longer has an active license and no longer qualifies the company. So
What are our possible actions?
So it's at the board's discretion if you wish to hear this as a probable cause hearing against Mr. Lovato. That's why we're coming to you for direction. Mr. Moody is present and feels like the board should hear this as a probable cause hearing. It would not be heard today as a probable cause hearing. Mr. Lovato did not receive any notification to be here.
I would recommend we go ahead and move it, take it to probable cause with Mr. Lovato.
It's the direction of the board to bring it to probable cause
yes.
against Mr. Lovato.
Yes.
Mr. Chair.
Yeah.
Who's the contract with? Which company?
Go ahead, Mr. Moody, come to the podium.
The contract is with High Point DBR, and it was signed by Hal Lovato.
And it was signed by him.
Yes. He's actually the only one we dealt with during the whole process, and Mr. Weldon's name just never came up until a few weeks ago when they sent me the building permit.
And during the time that the permit was pulled for your house, he was the qualifier, Mr. Weldon was?
Mr. Weldon qualified High Point DBR. And there was another company before that called TOP Construction, and apparently Mr. Weldon had qualified TOP Construction as well, because his license number showed up under Lovato's name and in the top logo. And then they became High Point DBR, same license number under Lovato's name, and then in the High Point DBR logo.
So legal counsel, the question would be, from what I understand, we can only go to the qualifier, the license holder of the permit?
So this is new to me. This is a new take on how this works. But the qualifier would be the responsible party.
Responsible, right.
But I'm not sure if there was any, I don't know enough about the facts, but I think Tim has got some information for us.
Yeah, and the way I understand it, and this, I don't have any proof of this, but just in the conversation, I guess Tyler Weldon qualified his company, and that very well could be. And I guess the contract was signed before, wasn't it?
Lovato.
Lovato became licensed.
Correct.
And the contract was with Lovato.
Correct.
But if Tyler Weldon was qualifying his company, that's completely legal. And I don't know when ties were severed, but I guess the CO was issued
To Tyler
to
Weldon's
Tyler
license.
Weldon.
Yeah, in March of 13.
And I guess the question would be, is there any recourse against the newer licensee that, I don't know. I guess not. I would say not.
From my understanding of the construction law, that it has to go to the one who is the qualifier at the time.
Right.
And if it had changed in the middle, then I think there might be some credibility to do towards Mr. Lovato, but I guess it's only against the Weldon, so at that point, it becomes another question, Ms. Counsel. Somebody whose license is no longer in existence, can we even, how do you find somebody who doesn't have a license in existence?
The way that I understand that, he hasn't, there's nothing for you to take action against.
Yeah.
And it becomes a civil matter,
That's where I was fixing to head to, is it,
but that's what.
unfortunately,
So some of the things that are, I can look into these questions, but I think they're pretty well understood. I'm thinking of other situations where we've dealt with that. For instance, all the Banks cases, you revoked his license. However, we were able to still proceed against him because we were going against him. Those complaints were filed, I think those complaints began being filed while he still had his license.
They were filed while we had his license.
And then we started revoking his license and so this far down the road, because this is a 10-year-old contract.
The house was finished in 13, and the significant damage really wasn't revealed until 20.
Okay. So you could direct that there be a probable cause investigation. It doesn't mean that you're finding probable cause. You could say, we want additional questions answered, so if you want me to look into those issues,
Yeah.
or you can make the decision that at this point you don't want to go forward, you don't want to direct an investigation.
Question would be, something that old? I mean, is that something that can even be brought forward?
Because there's statute of limitations.
construction law has just been changed. I'm a part of that committee at state level, so it has just been changed, waiting for the governor to sign it, from 10 years to 7 years for construction defects. Because there's a difference in maintenance versus construction defect.
Yes.
And so that is just now being changed, but as it stands currently, 10 years is construction defects. But it has to be decided, is it actually defect or is it maintenance? If somebody has a piece of wood, they don't keep it
Okay.
painted or update,
Well, this one would fall within the 10 years. You said it was 2013?
When the house was constructed, yes, sir.
Yep. So it would be within the 10 years.
I guess depending on the date,
Yeah.
we're in 2023.
And the other thing that I noticed, as I reviewed the statutes under 489, there really wasn't a specific statute of limitation. It basically says the primary or the secondary qualifier is responsible for the work that occurred during the point in time in which they should have been doing what they were supposed to be doing.
This
in the
is a
statute.
Florida state statute, is what this is. And
Exactly.
that says 10 years on construction defects is what they classify.
I believe
Well, I
that, you started out, when that first went in the statutes, I believe that was a material code violation, is what that
Okay.
went in as. It may have, that name may have changed, but I'm thinking it's probably still a material code violation would be the
10 years.
definition of a defect.
I think we should take the suggestion that we request that staff conduct a probable cause to determine if probable cause is there.
the staff would, you would direct staff to conduct an investigation
Yeah.
to bring before you, for you to determine whether or not
Yes,
probable cause
yes.
exists. And you don't need a motion in order for that, that's
Okay,
just a.
let's just do that.
For clarification purposes, which license would we be investigating?
Have to be under the one that was, that the permit is pulled under. It'd have to be, right?
Yes.
Which is no longer active.
So it's,
Even if it's not active, you can't, I guess.
There's nothing to suspend, there's nothing to, and this is a local license, right?
Correct.
So there's nothing to suspend, there's nothing to revoke, there's nothing, as far as any actions you could take, you couldn't take any actions against, there's no license to take an action against.
Can I ask you a question from the standpoint of Mr. Lovato's Escambia County license, which has been, it's inactive now, I think.
That's
But he
because he's now
also-
state certified.
Yeah, but he also has a state-certified license that he's operating under, pulling permits in Escambia County. He did some additional work on the structure in 2019 to try to shore it up. So under his Florida state license, he has done work on the house. And when the license question came up, I even went back to his website about 3 weeks ago, and the old Weldon license still shows up on his website in a contact me place and at the bottom of another location. So I think that's kind of odd. So I think we have connections with Mr. Lovato to this structure very clearly. He's still pulling permits from you guys. And I really think, we're not talking about what happened, but I think you would be very interested in understanding what did happen, because you need to be thinking, is it still happening now?
I think with a probable cause hearing, we could iron this out.
well, I think at that point, Mr. Chair, it might revert back from the original permit to this work that he was done in 2019.
yes.
Was there a permit pulled for that? Is it structural work? Should there have been a permit pulled?
Mr. Lister, I am not positive. I'll tell you what they did.
Well, let me slow you down. Since you want us to conduct, you want the staff to conduct a further investigation, it's best that you get with Melissa
Yes.
Beaver and give her that
That's
information.
what
There
we're
we go.
directing.
Okay, but I don't know if a permit was pulled.
And Melissa can take the direction from the board that
Yeah.
those are questions they want answered in
Yeah.
the course of this investigation.
Yeah. Well,
You understand what we want?
Yes, sir, I do.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, I appreciate you guys hearing us, and there are a lot of questions about the license and what was done at that point in time that really come to process. I mean, we just assumed he was a licensed contractor, the way everything was presented, and it would have been nice to have known that wasn't exactly the case, so we could have done some more diligence.
Yeah, okay.
But you know, there are maybe some process issues that you guys want to think about in your Escambia County statutes
Okay,
in terms of the way you present stuff.
thank you.
Thank you, appreciate it.
Thank you, Mr. Raymond.
Item 9.1.
Yes, sir, Chair. Item 9.1 is, yeah, council just informed me that we have a party present for item 2. So in an effort to not keep her or
Yeah.
prolong her being here, if we
Let's
could
switch it.
switch.
Just switch it.
Thank you.
Just for the record, there's no one else in the room,
Yeah.
so it's not like we're putting anybody out, but.
So item 9.2 is My D Tran, doing business as M&H Construction Services LLC, state registered license number RG 291103748. Contractor Competency Board complaint number 220686COM. It's in regard to Lin Yang Lee, doing business as Let's Meet Korean Barbecue LLC, complainant for 6235 North Davis Highway, Pensacola, Florida 32504. As you can recall, this hearing was continued because Mr. Tran was not able to be here. At that time, they asked for a continuance because his uncle was ailing, and the continuance was granted. We also received communication yesterday from Mr. Tran's representation. I told him that I would read his email to all of you. He says, "Good morning, ladies. In connection with following up with my client yesterday afternoon to prepare for this hearing, I learned he contracted COVID recently and is under a 10-day quarantine in Vietnam. Unfortunately, he will not be allowed to leave the country in time to be present for this meeting. I know the board expressed its unwillingness to reschedule this case again pursuant to a request, but under the circumstances, I believe due process requires this case to be rescheduled for a time when Mr. Tran can be in attendance. I have requested documentation from my client to substantiate the situation, and I will forward you whatever is provided. I would appreciate confirmation that Mr. Tran's due process rights will not be violated by holding this hearing in his absence. Thank you." I responded to him and let him know that basically a request for continuance after the window in which the chair could approve it is required to be presented to the board for their approval. I asked if he would be available as Mr. Tran's representation. His response to that was that I was not planning on attending the meeting to spare my client that cost. I don't see why this written communication shouldn't suffice for purposes of informing the board of Mr. Tran's inability to be in attendance. I cannot represent Mr. Tran's interest in this matter without him present, so even if I were to attend the meeting, it would strictly be in the limited capacity of making a request for continuance based on it being impossible for Mr. Tran to be there due to the quarantine in effect. We have already made that request, so it should be unnecessary to impose the cost of my attendance on my client. We respectfully request that the board consider this request as submitted. Without Mr. Tran being present, there is nothing my physical attendance can add at the meeting, except for imposing an unnecessary cost on my client. Please advise. I let him, I did discuss this with the chairman at the yesterday, and the chairman requested that additional documentation be provided to substantiate Mr. Tran's inability to be here. The chairman asked that Mr. Tran provide his initial flight documentation of his return date to the States. And as of right now, I have received nothing to substantiate the request. I did inform Mr. Hatler that historically this board has, with this case in particular, has expressed that they did not want to reschedule any more continuances. It's at the discretion of the board. Lin Yang Lee is present. Sky Lee is present as the complainant.
Okay.
So there are two questions before the board then. One is, do you want to grant the continuance? Based on the bylaws of the board, a decision to grant a continuance, once it gets past the 5-day, the pre-5 day of the hearing, it becomes a decision by the board, not just the chairperson. Up to that point, it's a chairperson decision. And so you would need to decide that. If you decide that you do not want to grant a continuance, then the question would be, are you ready to go forward with the hearing? And to make a determination. Just to give you some guidance on this, I pulled some case law, and basically we follow more of a common law due process. I know that was the defense counsel's argument that if he's not allowed to speak, then he's not being allowed to have his due process. In general, in an administrative proceeding, so let's talk the DBPR level, so that we understand, because they fall under a different statute that we do, but it does outline well what the due process is required. And it says, in an administrative proceeding, the legislature is charged with determining by what process and procedure legal rights may be asserted and determined, provided that the procedure adopted affords reasonable notice and a fair opportunity to be heard before rights are decided. So that would be the question that is before you. Did he receive reasonable notice? And that would be a question that you would want to ask of Jennifer Hampton, and then you can make the determination whether or not he has had a fair opportunity to be heard.
Okay, Jennifer. Has he received proper notice?
Yes, sir. His notice was sent to his representation. We also sent it certified mail to the respondent.
You may want to also inquire as to the record. I believe there were some announcements made on the record regarding any further continuances and the
Okay.
next court date, or the next hearing date.
That was in, yes, what was, you
So,
told him he,
so in the February meeting, when Mr. Tran was present and before this board, he requested a continuance to the April meeting, which is this meeting. The board denied that request to continue it to April and actually set his meeting date to March. Then at the March meeting, there was a request for continuance to April, because of his, the circumstances with his ailing uncle. And that request was approved by the chair, and here we are now at the April meeting. Now, during the February meeting, there was quite a bit of discussion had within the minutes in regard to further continuances. And at that time, it was specifically stated that there was not much approval for any further continuances. It's within the minutes
Yeah.
of the February meeting. It's at the board's discretion on whether they want to entertain this continuance.
from a legal standpoint, I think he's been advised, he's had clear opportunity.
Well, there's nothing before the board that substantiates why there should, right now, there's no evidence before the board as to why you would grant a continuance, and it's the board's decision to weigh the evidence. You have a statement by his attorney. But beyond that, you have to decide, is that statement sufficient for you to determine that a continuance should be granted? And that's for the board to weigh and determine.
Yeah, I would not be in favor of a continuance because we have another affected party that's not getting answered. And this has been continued on and on. So I think we have two parties in this, and one is here to be heard and has been. And so I would make a motion that we deny a continuance and move ahead with the hearing.
Board.
We have a motion?
I'm not sure if this is appropriate or not, but Ms. Lee did give me some information, and before you make that decision, she just may want to
Okay.
address the board.
After the February meeting, so he reached us, like try to make a settlement about this, like he make an offer, and then and it has been like going on for like over a month, like even before the March meeting was scheduled, like we declined the settle because it was really low, and then after March, like he rescheduled for the. We was like, yeah, we're not taking that. And then after March, he rescheduled again, and then he make another offer about the settlement. And right now, we just like make another counter offer right now. So we're kind of working on a settlement, but we haven't heard back. Even before this meeting, we haven't heard his answer to confirm the
So
counter.
you're working on a mutual agreement.
Yeah, kind of like that, but I don't.
So are you
know
okay
how.
with the continuance?
I'm like not sure right now in middle because how he keep pushing everything back, and
I just want to remind the board that this is a disciplinary hearing process. Regardless of any settlement that might be made between the two parties, this board has already determined that there's probable cause to proceed to disciplinary hearing, and that settlement would not have any bearing, well, it might have bearing on your decisions, but it wouldn't have any bearing on whether we continue.
I'll go ahead and leave my motion as it stands, and let's see if it gets a second or not.
Okay. Repeat your motion.
To deny the continuance and continue with the hearing.
Second.
Motion made, seconded, end of discussion. Being none, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, like sign. Being none, the motion to take it, or to continue with the disciplinary hearing is approved. You're fine. You don't have to stick around.
Thank you. No. I mean, if she wants to provide
If she wants
testimony.
to, yeah,
the-
if she wants
yes.
to provide testimony.
So,
We'll
so
get
let
there
me
in
help
just
you
a moment.
understand what's just happened. So they're going to go forward with the disciplinary hearing. If you have any information regarding the settlements or regarding restitution, that's something that they'll usually consider during this hearing.
Okay.
Or we could reset the restitution issue in case you, that's up to the board. They could reset the restitution, which is basically reimbursing you for your expenditures. It's also, and that might be an opportunity for him to make some decisions as far as a settlement with you.
Yeah.
So it kind of leaves that window open if you'd like to continue that out, but they want to go forward with the hearing as far as the disciplinary. So if you have, so does that, am I making it more unclear?
So what we're gonna do is proceed with what they found probable cause in regard to. And as we talk about these counts and these specific reasoning behind these counts, if you were to have anything to add, you would let the board know that you would have something to add to these items, okay? Yeah, if you would like. Okay, so we know that the complainant is present and she may or may not provide testimony, but I'm gonna go ahead and have her sworn in.
Do you solemnly swear the testimony you're about to give today will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? So, yeah.
Yes.
And we know that Mr. Tran is not present. I mean, he did request the continuance, which was ultimately denied. Staff would request that the backup documentation and testimony provided at the probable cause hearing be moved into evidence.
So moved.
Can I have a second?
And
Motion made and seconded. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign. Being none, all documentation will be moved into evidence.
And at this time, staff, Ms. Reber, was there any additional evidence or documentation provided after that hearing?
No, everything is in the record, including restitution.
So I'm going to actually bring up our administrative complaint and remind the board of the probable cause violations. The first one is 1837C6, which is financial mismanagement or misconduct in the practice of contracting that causes financial harm to a customer. The second one is 1837C8. Termination of a construction project in which the contractor is engaged or under contract. 2 shall be considered to have been abandoned after 90 days if the contractor terminates said project without notification to the prospective owner and without just cause for the abandonment. And then 1837D9F, failure to keep business and financial records as required. Ms. Lee, do you want to speak to any of those items?
She can't see all.
I'll bring back up count 1. So what the county cited was code section 1837C6 for Mr. Tran's failure to pay subcontractor with funds provided by the property owner for the contractor, for the contracted project. If you want to just elaborate on that.
Yes. So we pay him like 170,000 for that, and then let me pull out the email. I sent it really quick. So for the financial mismanagement, I have paid him like 170,000, and then even minus the AC he spent and the whole deposit, I would say roughly like 20,000. I still supposed to get back like 142,000, and then maybe minus some labor for 2,000. And I think I request like to get back like 140.
So Ms. Lee, you did have to pay subcontractors for work that you had paid Mr. Tran for?
Yes. The
Okay.
one already, yeah, the one already, I only give him credit for the AC he paid, so the one I will take care on that.
Okay. And then the next item was not performing work on the construction project in excess of 90 days. So this is in reference to abandoning the project?
Yes, 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 we renegotiate so many times, and then he's still like not really responded. And then even at the last time was like, we need this to be done. But every time he come back, try to ask for more money and stuff like that. And it was like unacceptable. So it was like, okay, done. Then I found a new contractor to continue.
Okay. And the last one is 1837 D9A, D9F, failing to keep and provide financial documentation related to the project.
Yes, I asked him so many times for all the receipts and everything, progress and stuff like that, but it never really provide anything. Even the courthouse we're in right now, asked him to provide the communications and stuff like that. Nothing has been provided.
And also the board requested that he provide the documentation.
No, he
And
never
we
got
have
it.
not received
We've never
any
received it.
documentation.
One question, the last line, first violation, $100 to $1?
Yeah, that's
Motion to find him in violation of count 1 and assess a fine of $1,000.
Motion made, is there a second?
Second.
You have something?
I didn't hear the motion, sir.
The motion is to find him in violation of count 1 with a $1,000 fine.
Thank you.
Motion made and seconded. Any further discussion? Being none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign. Being none, count 1 violation is approved with a $1,000 fine.
As to count 2, does the board find the respondent in violation of code section 1837 C8?
Make a motion to find him in violation of count 2 with a fine of $1,000.
What about a revocation or probation?
So that's what I was gonna bring up to the board, because you see, it does include any such other penalty as provided within Escambia County Code Section 1837. The previous count did that as well, and I know historically that's been a little unclear for this board. So keep in mind that there are several options available to this board, including probation, letter of reprimand, suspension of permitting privileges, revocation of permitting privileges, suspension of license, revocation of license. So I just wanted to make sure that you were aware of all of your options.
I'll withdraw my motion, allow someone else to make a motion if they have those things in mind.
Okay. We're at count 2. In violation of count 2, is there a motion?
Do you need the options repeated?
Is this his first violation? Is what I'm trying to find out.
So Mr. Tran has come before this board before. I would have to, because this count doesn't include that
this
language, I didn't research to see if it was a first violation or not.
A question?
Yes.
Does this contractor have any open permits other than this case that we know of, or is that?
Just give us just a moment, we're checking on that.
Yeah, there's no, but in
Your
this
question
case,
on the
there's
open
no-
permits is for any open permits in Escambia County?
I'm bringing it up now on your screen.
What I'm saying is, there's no first or second violation with count 2.
No.
It's just, yeah.
There is with count 3. That's why I'm
There is
trying to
with
get
count 3,
clarification.
but not this.
And I did research count 3, and you'll notice it only states first violation for that count. So, this is the license card for Mr. Tran, doing business as M&H Construction Services, LLC. Here you will see the associated permits under his license, and bear in mind, this is all public record. So these are the items that are currently open.
Open?
Well, you can see the status on each of them, closed, permit issued. If it says permit issued, then it's gonna be still open. And there's 3 pages, and this stems back all the way from, right now is 2016. If you'd like me to go back further, I can, but these are the newer items. Mhm.
He's got,
I'm trying to filter it to permit. It won't let me filter just to permit issued, but I
at
can.
least he has 2 permits open right now, or issued.
Well, I mean, he's got more than that. Yeah.
You got quite a few.
And you did say that he has been in front of this board before?
Yes, sir, Mr. Patel, we have received complaints on his license before. A previous investigator had investigated those complaints. I'm looking back. I don't see a notation within the license on those complaints. I would have to do further research on it.
Okay.
If his license was to be put on, if his license was supposed to be put on probation, then he can't work, right? With the
So
active permit.
probation is different than suspension. Probation gives them the ability to work, but any further violation, so if another complaint were to come forward, then it would come to this board for them to take action for that probationary item. Suspension means he cannot, yeah.
So you can set, if you wanted to do probation, you could set the parameters of what that probation would include. So there may be, you can put requirements within his probation that he has to meet. So, for instance, you know, making restitution, or you could require additional, I think you can do additional.
You could have a probationary period of a year or more.
And you can you require additional inspections? You can, so on his jobs, you could require additional inspections. But in this situation, you could make it a condition of his probation that he make restitution. So there's some, and then you can also set, you know, if you fail to complete that probation, then you can set those, you could also set those parameters. What would that look like? You'll come back before the board for this complaint to be readdressed, or you know, you can give him time to meet those standards. So the probation allows you a lot of options without affecting his ability to work. But you can put requirements on the work that he is doing.
Yeah.
So that if you're concerned that this may be the beginning of a recurring problem, you could certainly have inspections increased. But the problem is, who pays for the inspection? Right, and so you don't want to put an additional, on the people that do have permits with him, that he's pulled permits on their jobs, you want to be careful about not increasing their cost because of his behaviors. But it would have to be, inspections would have to be paid for.
But you could make him pay for it.
You
I said
certainly
you
could.
could make him pay for the new and any additional inspections.
Right, there's no requirement, there's no requirement that the property owner pay for the inspection. Anybody can pay for it, correct?
Yes, as long as we get payment.
Yeah, but you said you didn't want to make the,
Well, that's what I'm saying. You could put the onus on him that he cannot collect it from the property owners, that
what
it's
I'm saying
on him.
is, he has to pay for it and nobody else. In other words, he can't recover the permit cost.
Not the permit cost, the inspection cost.
Oh,
is
the
what-
excuse me,
So
the
if you wanted to
inspection
order additional inspections, it would be at his
expense.
cost.
At his-
Right.
Another idea too is to have a design professional such as an engineer do inspections and submit affidavits at certain periods of time.
So if you wanted to make findings today and maybe get some, if you want to look back, if you want to consider what you want to do as the punishment or how you want to address this, I mean, we can go on if you guys want to discuss it further. Y'all, I mean, not you guys. If the board wants to discuss it further, we can postpone that, or you can continue discussing it until you come up with a motion that you want to put forward.
I think we're doing just fine.
Yeah, let's just go ahead and get it done with. Okay, let's go
So,
back to the counts.
let's go back to the counts. So we've already done count one, so we're on count two. So I make a motion to find him in violation of count two, and a fine of $1,000 and probation, at which time he needs to comply with restitution if it is established. I don't know if we do restitution now or not.
So that will be determined later on.
Okay.
After we do the counts. You do need a determination on the length of probation,
1 year.
1 year probation.
1 year probation.
And so the parameters for that probationary period would include any restitution
Correct.
that should be determined later.
Yeah, correct.
Okay, just making sure it's clear to me.
Second.
Yeah, motion made and seconded. Any further discussion? Being none, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, like sign. Being none, the motion is approved.
If he fails to make that restitution, that's going to be, that's the only condition of your probation. So you would want to put on the record, failure to make that restitution, what does it result in? Does he come back before the board? Is there an automatic suspension?
I would assume that he would come back from the board based on the prior conversation if he does not.
Find him in violation of all three counts, and then at that time say failure to respond to all three counts or to honor those fines situation, he must come back before the board.
So I'll walk you through that as we get to those items, okay? Yep. So we're on to count three.
Yeah.
So, make a motion to find him in violation of count three.
Mm-hmm.
And a fine of $1,000.
Yes, the administrative complaint should read $1,000.
Right.
In that area.
And you don't need to do probation because you've already done
Already
that.
done it.
Well, if you want to, you can just make it a concurrent probation,
With
if you wanted
concurrent
to.
probation.
With concurrent probation.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign. Being none, the motion's approved for guilty of count three with $1,000 fine and concurrent probation.
Okay, now the board has to determine a time period in which the fines have to be paid and what should happen if those fines are not paid within that time
Yeah.
period.
I would offer him a year.
Typically, you would make your fines a condition of your probation. So he would have that year period to pay those fines?
Yes.
Make a motion that he pays all the fines within the year probation term.
Perfect.
There's a motion. Is there a second? Motion made and seconded. Any further discussion? Being none, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, like sign.
Aye.
One objection. Motion passes. 1 year probation, or he must pay his fines within 1 year
As a condition of the
as a
probation?
condition of probation.
Yes, sir, Chair. And at this time, I believe Ms. Lee would like to request a restitution amount?
Yes, one.
It should be, it's.
It is.
I think it
It's-
was
it's,
already in the,
It is right here.
okay.
She has her calculations spelled out within this email. The total that she would be requesting is $140,000.
I make a motion, we award the restitution of $140,000 to be paid within 90 days.
Second.
Do you want that as a condition of his probation,
As a condition of the probation,
but within 90 days?
within 90 days.
Okay.
Motion made and seconded. Did you second?
Second.
Any further discussion?
So my question would be, if there is a failure to pay that restitution amount within 90 days, it will be brought to this board for further determination?
Correct.
Motion made and seconded. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign. Being none, the motion is approved.
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman, and now we need a recommendation to the CILB.
Said, you want to make a motion for the CILB?
Yes, sir, motion that we submit this to the CILB for their decision on the maximum amount of disciplinary action.
For their disciplinary action. Yeah, yeah.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. Any further discussion? Being none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign. Being none, the motion for the recommendation to the CILB is approved.
Thank you, sir. Now we're gonna
Gotta
circle
go
back.
one more.
One more.
Get Jesse.
This item is 9-1, Jesse W. Lacoste, doing business as Lacoste Construction Group LLC, state registered license number RG 291103980, contractor competency board complaint number 23017COM. It's in regard to Carol Bergeron, homeowner complainant at 1704 Ensenada Uno, Pensacola Beach, Florida 32561. Proper notice was sent to the respondent. There are no parties in the room, so neither party to this case is present. Staff would request that the backup documentation and testimony provided at the probable cause hearing be moved into evidence.
So moved.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. Any further discussion? Being none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign. Being none, the motion's approved to send all documentation into evidence.
Ms. Reber, was there any additional documentation provided in regard to this complaint?
No, there was not.
So we will go ahead and get into our accounts. At the probable cause hearing, the board found probable cause to believe that the respondent violated code section 1837C6, code section 1837D13C3, and code section 1837D4. I have the counts pulled up on your screen for you. At this time, we'll go ahead and make a determination on the counts.
Before we make that determination, I just want to clarify. Chairman Matthews, right before we went into this case, said get Jesse, and he may want to take this opportunity to clarify that whether or not he is entering into this with without any bias or prejudice before
No
we get
bias or prejudice or anything.
Okay, thank you.
Since his name appears at the first of the thing, that's why I said get Jesse. It could have been get my ID too, but it didn't. I'm not out to get Jesse.
That's
the
what I just
key.
wanted to clarify that
That's
for the
what I wanna
record.
say. I'm not out to get him.
Thank you, Chairman.
All right, as to count one, does the board find the respondent in violation of 1837C6?
Motion to find them guilty, $5,000 fine.
Is there a second?
Second.
Motion made and seconded. Any further discussion? Being none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign. Being none, the motion of guilty, count one with a $5,000 fine is approved.
As to count two, Does the board find the respondent in violation of 1837 D13 C3? This is a repeat violation.
I make a motion to find him in violation of count 2 with a fine of $5,000.
Second.
How about, and revoke his
Second.
license? That's been,
I'm sorry, I thought it was already revoked, but yes.
That's correct. The license is already revoked. However, it's part of that because it specifically says and. So you would
Okay,
need to.
I would like to add to that motion revocation.
Second.
motion made and seconded. Any further discussion? Being none, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, like sign. Being none, the motion is approved for guilty count 2 with a $5,000 fine and revocation of license.
As to count 3, does the board find the respondent in violation of code section 1837 D4? And this would also be a repeat.
Motion to find guilty on count 3, $5,000 fine and revocation.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. Any further discussion? Being none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign. Being none, the motion for guilty on count 3 plus $5,000 fine and revocation is approved. Any further business before this board?
Motion to move it to the CILB with all of the ability for them to do the maximum amount of penalty.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. Any further discussion? Being none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign. Being
Quick-
none,
Quick question, go ahead. Finish up the vote.
there is none. The motion is approved, guilty, or the recommendation of the CILB for the maximum penalty consideration.
Do we have any restitution request on this one?
So, Mr. Bell, what she put in here in regard to restitution, she ultimately had to sell the house, and took quite a loss on that sale. It would be up to the board, to make that determination if in regard to the sale of the home. I don't know if council can help to advise in that regard.
So what did she advise, what did she say was the difference of what she would have gotten?
So they, initially, they were saying that the house would have sold between $691,000 to $741,000. And I believe down bottom on this document, she's saying they had to do the final sale price of as is for $685,000.
It was my understanding and my communication with her that she felt like she lost about 104,765.
In addition.
In addition, that's
So
what she's estimated.
The
that she
restitution
lost.
could be 685 plus 104.
So just to be clear, what we're talking about is market prices here. So she's not saying, she's saying she lost money on the sale of the house because of the condition it was in at the time.
Yeah.
But those are market prices. So you have to determine, so you're making a determination whether or not the house received what the market would bear.
I don't feel comfortable with making that decision.
Can we, Mr. Chair, can we allow the owner to come back and
Yes.
ask for restitution so we don't have to try to set some abstract number?
Yes, we can do that.
So I would motion that we allow the owner the opportunity to come back at a later date and ask for restitution on this case.
Well, you could make a motion to establish restitution at the value the owner request.
He actually already has a motion.
Don't we already have that, I think?
No, there's only been, I don't think there's been a restitution motion before this. Do you have one?
No, I'm saying make the motion that you approve restitution in the amount that the homeowner presents.
You would need evidence before you to determine whether or not you should approve that.
I'll
restitution.
second his motion as presented,
As to what?
that we have offer the plaintiff the opportunity to come in, present the case for what that restitution amount would be at a later meeting.
Yes. That's a motion. Is there a second?
That was his motion.
Okay. All those in favor say aye. Opposed, like sign. Being none, the motion is approved.
Hit it.
We're gone.